guests on vinyl and vision.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. Here we are with episode 103. Today's very special guest is Ev Gold of the band Cinema from Brooklyn, New York. This new album, Mjölnir, features a collaborator, Thor Harris. He is very much a part of this album, and also another important part of this album is that it was recorded at Bisi Studios with Martin Bisi, who was a former guest of the show here, episode 98, I think he was. I can't remember, but it was somewhere right around there. And Ev is a pretty amazing guy, super high energy, a lot of fun. So we had a great talk, great conversation based around Fugazi's In On The Killtaker from 1993. Ev was great with sharing some very pertinent information about that album, about his own personal stories involving that album, including working with Don Zientara, the engineer of that album, at In Your Ear Studios, where In On The Killtaker was recorded. So he's been in that studio, he's worked with the engineer, and he's had a great experience with the whole thing. And if you stay tuned, you'll hear all about it. And it's pretty enlightening, and especially considering the album we're talking about. It just kind of makes it, kind of ties it all together very nicely. So I'd like to say thanks to Ev for taking the time and doing this with me. And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. If you like the show, all that we ask that you do here is please do all the things you do with the internet. Like, share, subscribe, rate, review, all that happy horse shit. We appreciate it immensely. If you care to help us out in a financial way, we don't do that Patreon bullshit. We don't ask you for money. We sell things. That we run the business, psychicstatic.net. You can go there. We sell the stuff from our label, which we release music from the Hammer Party. So you can buy any one of their albums, t-shirts, you can buy my merch, you can buy albums or records that are in the store on there on the website. All of it goes towards doing this, and it helps us out. So if you can do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much, and enjoy the show. Hello.
Hello.
Ev Gold.
I never know what the fuck is going on either. So we're in the same boat. But I'm Ev Ev Gold, and I'm here, and it's nice to meet you. Hello. And I'm happy to get wild and talk a lot of stuff. Yeah,
I was kind of looking forward to that. Yeah, I sense you are a wild man.
I have my moments.
That was a vast generalization. I don't know if I should have said man. Everyone, I should have assumed pronouns.
It's that, I mean, it's nice to be specifically aware of how our words affect others.
Right.
Man was okay and is okay in this instance, here and now. Yes.
Cool. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Honestly, it's I really been looking forward to this because I've been listening to your band a lot. I've been listening to basically everything you have out right now.
Okay. There's a vast. It's a vast array of sounds. But let me not interrupt you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Actually, you're correct in saying that it is a vast array because there's a spectrum in addition to a large sum, like a large discography.
It's been 15 years now that my cousin and myself, my cousin Paul and myself have been the core duo that makes up Cinema. And we've been making music for a while. So we've really tended to that garden a lot. We go there a lot for our play, for our sanity. And there are a lot of fruits we pick from the trees. I mean, there's been a bunch of albums. Yeah, there's all sorts of different sounds. If you've been checking out the catalog, I know our Bandcamp has more or less, I think almost all 7 or maybe 6 of the 7 records. The first record, 2008's Exile Baby, isn't on the Bandcamp, but nonetheless, all the stuff since. And at one point it's like post-hardcore or it's rock, and then one point it's like it goes to like more punk, but a saxophone shows up, and then suddenly it's all-out jazz. Then it's like time warp, ambient. What is this jazz? Then it's this new album that's kind of a mix of some different elements. So Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't really follow one direct sound per se. You know, I think when we
Yeah.
first started, my cousin Paul and myself as a duo, one of the things we saw in the power in our chemistry and how comfortable we felt getting wild and loose with things, we wanted to not limit ourselves to a specific genre per se.
Mm.
It might be an easier path to choose a certain genre. Maybe you can get some more traction and be a part of a certain community and get on certain bills. And there's something to be said about it.
Mm.
But it just fit us a bit more to keep ourselves really free.
Sure.
Yeah, so we've kind of been all over the place, pinging and ponging
Yeah. Well,
sonically.
it works for you too. I mean, and I noticed that because I was going through all of the records and some of the EPs and so forth. So I listened to the very first recording to your very latest, and the first thing I noticed before listening was looking at all of the records and kind of pulling them up. Every single one of them was, like you said, uh, defined as a different genre, which I was just like, this is pretty weird, but and it's interesting for me because I'm a musician and I love music, and so I am not closed-minded to any genre. I mean, I like a vast array of things, and therefore your band is kind of perfect for that because I can go all the way back to the beginning and kind of experience the more punk hardcore influenced version of cinema to now what is this new jazz fusion ambient electro punk thing. Yeah, it's great. Very
I
cool.
like that. We might have to use that.
Go for it. Okay.
That's an astute approximation.
Yeah, I mean, and so now one of the components that makes the new record is incorporating a collaborator, Thor Harris.
Yes, that's definitely something that kind of pushed the direction of the record. It was the involvement of the collaborator, our third head on the three-headed monster for this album, Thor Harris. Thor
Yeah.
Harris, notable Thor Harris, Swans. We're such fans of Swans. Holy cow, the iteration that he was a part of, the 2010 through 2017 version of the band, um, stellar to say the least.
Mm.
Just mind blowing. We saw them a number of times. At the times that we saw them, we never thought we'd ever collaborate with anyone on stage. It was a mind blow to have the connectivity occur
Yeah.
between us and Thor. But Thor definitely affected our entire process. We invited him in to collaborate on the entire affair. Like the we didn't prepare stuff and say, Thor, we're going to record in a studio and send you tracks over the internet and lay down something. It was the three of us. Let's put all hands on deck here, and create.
Mm.
And that was what kind of inspired the title of the record. We didn't want to per se have the record say be Cinema featuring Thor Harris. We like to vacillate between all these genres and sounds, all under the umbrella of Cinema. And moreover, we wanted to respect the fact that Thor is notable,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't want to have it feel like it was exploitative in any way. We were really sensitive about that. He didn't ask us to be, but we just felt, how could we properly honor the fact that Thor is involved in the title somehow? And it was my cousin, the drummer, Paul, who had mentioned Mjölnir being the term for Thor's hammer. We were in the midst of talking about how the band had a different swing. There was like a different lope. And those are elements that Thor introduced that we hadn't dealt with previously. So they definitely affected the energy we had. This frenetic, on fire energy was kind of struck by his energy,
Oh,
and
okay.
it allowed us a different swing to the music, and we felt like the swing, the hammer. This album seems to be called Mjölnir, in reference to the Norse term for Thor's hammer, but also, and because Thor is on the album,
Mm.
etc. But he definitely plays a great part. And also, before I because I'll go tangentially down rabbit holes until this is the 4-hour version that you have to never have me on again. But one other person who plays a huge part in the sound of this record is the individual who produced it, and
Martin
that's
Bisi.
Martin Bisi.
I
Yeah,
noticed that. Yeah.
we synchronized on his name there. Um, he's he's an absolute sound maven. He's a little magic man. I mean, he's not so little. I'm only a few inches taller than him, but just the way he seems to become a part of his mixing board and become a part of the tracking room as he runs in and out to make sure he has you as comfortable as possible. He just morphs into this small wizard in his magical land, and that land is BC Studio, which is a studio
Hmm.
that he's worked at and been at since he went in there in 79. But the point is, BC is starting to make magical, wondrous sound there in 81 when
Yeah.
I'm just 3 years old. And the area, the Gowanus area then of Brooklyn is, as he said, overrun with dogs and wild and overrun with gangs like the movie The Warriors. There was really
Hmm.
like in the streets.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
And
talked to Martin actually. I mean, I had him on here. I had him on the show. So,
oh,
so I got the
oh,
history. I did the
okay,
research. I don't know how
okay.
everyone else might not know, so it's fine to kind of go off on it and explain it a little bit. But I mean, Martin Bisi is a legend. I mean, his studio is legendary. Was worked with so many amazing artists, and you even not only have you worked with Thor now on this record, but in relation to BC Studios, I mean, you were there for the 35th anniversary, was it that compilation
35th.
they did? Right.
Yes.
So you were part of
Yes.
that, and you were part of his actual film documentary, The Sound and Chaos, which I've seen.
Yes.
So
It's I'm thrilled to hear that you know the entire story. I'm glad you cut me off at the turn there.
no,
But
that's fine.
with for us to converge
Yeah, yeah.
in a nice way.
But so it's very impressive that you had this ability to be in that studio because it is a legendary studio and it's definitely known for its sound. And you've been there before. You've actually recorded two other records there. Yeah,
Yes.
Night of the
Yes.
Fights and Man Bites Dog. Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, it was it was an act of God or the universe or just the weather. I guess you could say that brought us into BC's orbit. There
You
was a
got flooded in
hurricane.
there. You got flooded. You got like drawn in.
We all got flooded together. No, there was a hurricane that hit Brooklyn in October of 2012. It's rare for hurricanes to really make landfall here in Brooklyn. I've lived here almost all my life, and it hasn't happened all that often. But in October of 2012, Hurricane Sandy really nailed and drilled Brooklyn. At the time, Paul and I had a practice space down in the Gowanus area, about 4 or 5 blocks away from BC. We had never met BC. We didn't know BC was, that close and accessible, but we knew he was down there. And I, of course, being a encyclopedic music fan first,
Oh, okay.
I was like fully aware of of so many, not every, so many, CDs, records, so many pieces of art in my house where he had his fingerprints on to begin with. So we were very
Mm,
aware we were practicing near BC, but we hadn't met him yet. We weren't quite sure how we would. And then Hurricane Sandy destroyed a lot of Brooklyn, including our practice space, which was a few blocks away from his recording studio.
right.
So we got the call from the practice space owner, come on down. It's been quite a calamity has occurred. Many people have lost a lot. Come on down, go through the destroyed gear. We just didn't believe it could be, but there was a huge surge from the Gowanus Canal, which is already like fetid, disgusting, toxic wastewater to
Sludge.
begin with.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
Paul and I went down there on Halloween of 2012 to drag our gear out. At the front door, they gave us like masks and gloves because the toxic sludge. And as we dragged all our broken gear out of the studio and laid it on the sidewalk before us to try to figure out, is there anything salvageable?
Mm.
I noticed over Paul's shoulder a diminutive figure walking down the street with long hair in some winterish coat, seeming to just like case the place to take a look at what's going on.
Mm.
And as he got closer, being a crazy music fan, I noticed him. I'm like, oh my god, that's Martin Bisi. That's Martin Bisi. Oh boy, I'm one that can sometimes I can't keep my mouth shut.
Hmm.
And most times it works out well for me, and sometimes it doesn't. I'll tell you that. But
Sure.
yeah, this time it worked out well in that Martin responds. Well, too, he plays well with others, or at least those that seem to come off as some unhinged psychopath calling him over. He at least was open minded to. As I was like, hey Martin," and he's like, "Do I know you?" And then I explained, "Well, no, but we know you, and we love
Right.
you and your work, and we're this band, and we just lost all our stuff, and so did that band, and we're all in this together." And we bonded with him on the street during that moment, and he had said, he had suffered some damage over by his studio, but maybe we'd connect at some point, and that was the
Sure.
beginning. That was the seed. And that was October of 2012. And we started to be a part of BC's world. Then we played some shows opening for his band, and then we went to Europe with him opening for his band, and that was a big,
Hmm.
that was a big egg cracked open by Martin for us in November of 2013,
Yeah.
which led to us going back there 5 or 6 times on our own after
Right.
that. And then in 2014, A Night at the Fights, that was the first one that we did with him that came. So it's been this really great, beautiful, organic relationship where over the last decade, we've done a lot of work with him,
Nice.
luckily. And he
Yeah.
plays a great, large part in the how effective this new
I
album is.
I was gonna say because we're talking about Thor Harris initially being the collaborator, this third member, if you will, on the project, but Martin playing an equally kind of important role, and so kind of like the rounding out the quad core that is cinema on this project. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, the album's very good. I've been listening to it a lot, and kind of listening specifically for those elements because I mean it's a great album just for anyone being introduced to the group because regardless of where it was recorded and who was helping you make it, it's it's captivating, and so now to going back into the catalog, it's really impressive to kind of hear the progression kind of getting to where you are, and we'll get into that a little bit later as far as like where you are and so forth. But going back to Thor first, how did you meet him?
So the way Thor comes into our orbit is this. It's wild. I mean, to trace it, to really trace it back, early on in our career, and this ties into the album that we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay,
Actually,
great.
if we ever get around to it, I don't
If
know. We'll
yeah,
see.
if we feel
You
like
know,
it,
if
sure.
we feel it, we'll see. But the point is, when I was a kid, I was highly affected by the album that we're going to talk about tonight. And I was also the kind of, young, crazy, drink it all up type of fan that loved liner notes and loved all the information, all the mystique that was involved in the pre-internet era of music. So ultimately, when I had read where the album that we're going to talk about tonight was recorded and who engineered it, I always, as years went on, hoped to maybe work with that person or go there.
Hmm.
So ultimately, I'm talking about Don Zientara, who's the engineer of the album that we're going to listen to tonight, and it was recorded at Inner Ear Studios in Arlington, Virginia. When Paul and I were a young band, about a year or two in, we made one album and we ran around and we said we played as many shows as possible. In 2009, we did 100 shows alone that year. It was a wild year. We just said yes to everything. But the point is,
Sure.
we made a demo of a bunch of new songs, and I got up the nerve to look up Inner Ear Studio and Don Zientara, and we sent him a demo tape saying we'd love nothing more than to come and record with you. And we didn't know how it would work, or we just anticipated everything being something that's gate kept, as being a Brooklyn band. So many things are here in
Sure.
New York. I mean, everything is gate kept. But Don was really receptive and wrote back right away, excited about what we sent him. And it was this initial extra, dose of lead into our pencil that made us really believe in what we were doing too. And we had this really ambitious project of recording like 13 songs, and
Hmm.
we wanted to go for a week, and he was okay with it, and he let us actually sleep in the pantry at Inner Ear for 6 of the 7 days. On the seventh day, we got a motel room and washed up, and then we mixed. But the point is, at the end of that crazy experience of recording with Don, we were such a young band, we didn't even know what to do next. We wanted to believe wow, making an album in such a great location with such a great engineer producer is going to amount to everyone wanting to know about it. But the fact is, you have to get people to know about it. So Don recommended, us being a young band, maybe we might want to see if we could hire a publicist. And we were just like, hire a publicist. That sounds really like I got to put on a shirt and tie. Like, are we good looking enough to have a? Does a publicist tell me like I should have my scarf? Like maybe I'll have a Steven Tyler thing. I'm not trying to knock any of it. I don't know why I'm making it into some stupid easy joke like that. I have better material. It might come out later. Point is, we
Okay.
were just like publicists. And Don said
Yeah.
he was really good friends with what he considered to be a great publicist named Howard Wolfing.
Oh,
And Howard was an individual that Don played in one of Don's first bands with, a band called Under Heaven that they had started in like 1978 or so. And Don pointed to a picture on his wall at Inner Ear, and he's like, "See that guy right there with the bass in that picture? That's Howard in our
that's
band
Howard.
Under Heaven." I
Nice.
really trust Howard. He's a good person, and he works with weird outside stuff, and he also is open-minded like myself in that he'll talk to you if you don't have the biggest tail dragging behind you, knocking
Sure.
everything down with your name. So we left there with a recording we believed in and Howard's phone number, and that was back in like 2010 or 2011.
Oh, wow. Have you been
And
with Howard since?
yeah, we got in touch with Howard then, and Howard jumped right in with us and helped to start to steer us then. At the
Wow.
time when we jumped right in with him, we were hyper aware of his amazing catalog of artists he was working with currently, let alone the ones he had worked with in the past. But being new to that whole world, the best thing to do is not to make wild assumptions. So we didn't. We never thought there would be any relation between us and other artists he worked with, and we didn't expect that. We only hoped he would do his best to let people know in the press world about us.
Sure.
But as our relationship grew, and he's been like fighting for us over the years, and he's worked all of the albums since Shoot the Freak EP. I guess he's told some people behind the scenes, check these guys out.
Yeah.
I'm saying there's probably been a bunch of people who didn't reach out to us. He probably said to a couple of people. I mean, it couldn't have been a hole in one. It couldn't be Thor's the only one because Howard is good like that. So he probably
Right.
has recommended
Yeah.
to us to a few people, but it just so happened in late 2017 we heard from Thor out of nowhere, and
Oh,
I had seen that iteration of Swans that Thor was in that was just coming to an end about 8 times in that period of time live. I know Paul and I saw them together at least twice.
mm,
Um,
okay.
I didn't anticipate us ever hearing from Thor. I had just been at a Swans concert, one of the last ones they had here at Warsaw in November of 2017, where he was talking to Martin, who's my friend, 5 feet away from me. And out of respect, I didn't go over and say, "Hi, I'm me. I need to talk to you." There was no introduction there. I wasn't going to force an introduction. I was shocked a month later when he reached out saying, "Howard sent your stuff to me, and I think that it's cool. I hope that I see you live, or maybe we'll play together someday."
Hmm.
And me and
Nice.
Paul were very excited, and we, as Paul and I are prone to do, we're chasing this. We're like floating in space, and we're chasing a rock, and there's no gravity, but like we're willing ourselves towards this rock, and it keeps on like other rocks come into play, and we just keep following the trail. We can't help ourselves. So when Thor mentioned being interested in playing with us, we kicked that can and kicked that can until there was a time that opened up where he had some work he was doing in the Brooklyn area, and Martin had some time open in his studio. And
Oh,
Thor and Martin had worked together years before, so Thor was even more enticed at this idea of let's converge at Martin's place. I haven't been there, in years,
mm,
and let's create. And Martin was excited, Thor was excited, we were
yeah.
excited, and that was how Thor came into our orbit. So it
Nice.
was this organic process that
And, and
occurred that
and
we're really
completely
grateful for.
serendipitous too. That's crazy. Just because it's hard enough to book studio time as it is. I imagine it's hard enough to book time at BC Studios, and
Yeah.
then to have him there, it's just like perfect. That's amazing.
It was a Wednesday afternoon in June, the middle of the day. It was hot, a time when
Hmm.
all other times we'd be at our day jobs doing what we do, but instead, the universe shifted, the opportunity presented, and we all dove on it. And that's why I
Nice.
had to mention Martin's involvement, because Martin was really helpful in facilitating and also in the post process of us editing stuff down and in the mixing, etc., as he's prone to do on any project he's on. But um, Martin's amazing. But yeah, it was a good synergy, and it was serendipitous, as you said.
Yeah. And so now you had just mentioned how you had also been able to work with another kind of legendary engineer, producer, and studio, Inner Ear Studios, with Don Zientara, who recorded this album as the engineer and in that studio. This Fugazi is who we're talking about, and In On The Killtaker is the album, released in 1993, and it was recorded at In Your Ear Studios. Don Zientara on the board, engineer, and Ted Nicely as the producer, correct?
Nicely and Fugazi, I think together might be credited
Right.
as production,
Sure.
but in the
Yeah.
least, Zientara is definitely noted as engineered.
Yeah. And so now you also have recorded a couple of different records or projects in that studio with Don as well, right?
Yes, 2011's Shoot the Freak EP, 2012's Manic Children, the Slow Aggression full length, which is 79-minute insanity. Back we were trying to, I don't know what we were trying to be, we were just trying to really let it all hang all over. And we also there's a 2018 Record Store Day release. There's a seminal record store down in the DC area, Crooked Beat. Really cool spot. We've got a chance to play there on an in-store. That was a really fun afternoon. So yeah, the recording there that grew directly out of the album we're going to talk about tonight. I can say that it grew directly out of that. The album that we're going to talk about tonight was instrumental in turning my head to a number of things. And one of those things was taking note of where it was recorded and who recorded it. And like I said, 15 to 18 years later, I sent a demo to Don.
Yeah.
And to circle it all to present day, just as recent as there's a new book that's out about Inner Ear Studios. It's a picture book. It's released by Akashic Books. They do a lot of real great stuff. I believe it's called The Inner Ear of Don Zientara. It just came out in June, and there's a book tour that is occurring. And this really great moment happened. Our relationship with Don grew over the years, where we've gotten to know his family. He's had us, stay at his house. It grew from sleeping in Inner's pantry to the next time it was come sleep at my house. In his house, we slept in the basement, and the basement is what right now has been repurposed into what it originally was, which was Inner Ear. Inner Ear was in the basement of Don's house when he did the Black Dots Bad Brains recording in '79.
Wow.
It was originally set up in his basement.
So
Ultimately, it moved to a facility, and the facility closed about maybe a year or so ago, and it's back in his basement now. He's doing select projects, but we've slept in that basement. We've become very close to Don, and just as recent as a few weeks ago, at a reading here, this book that just came out, where there was a panel. It was Don and Guy from Fugazi and Joe from Fugazi and Antonia, who's the photographer from the book. And at the end of the engagement, when I was saying goodbye to Don, he was very affectionate and loving toward me, and kind of opened up a floor for me to have a comfortable conversation with Guy and Joe about my history with Don, etc., and to not only just interact with them as their gods and I am their minions level, but for a second for them to look at it and as like, Don is talking to this crazy kid like he's someone that Don likes. So I'm gonna maybe listen to this kid, even though he's gonna be wild-eyed and tell me how much he loves they dealt with me, let's say that way, in a way that made me feel, handled with a bit of care by absolute gods to me. And that was just, that was just a few weeks ago. And that's like, holy cow, to be anywhere near that whole family and to be accepted. And moreover by Don, who's like the father of it all. What a great gift. And when the opportunity to come on your show and discuss an album that was important to me or relevant or just, and whether it was knocked me out or I didn't like it, whatever it was that it was going to be, I started to get attracted to things that were like milestone albums for me that I
Sure.
consider for me. Like I'm not on
And
the album, but it's a milestone for me.
but you sir you were there. You were in that studio. I mean, granted, years after the fact, but I mean, like one of my questions for you is going to be like, what is like? Do you feel the magic in that place? Considering you've been in your ear, the proper studio, and you've been in the original and existing in your ear in Don's actual home in his basement. Like how much magic is there?
It is pure magic. It's pure magic. You can feel it. You really can feel it. It's there is I didn't understand that magic appears when everything gets to the point of calm. And that's when like fast happens, when slow starts. Like Don wants you to be yourself, and
Hmm.
there's a real feeling of play
Hmm.
there. I know we went under the impression like he's Don Zientara and he worked on all these Fugazi albums and everything else, and oh
Right.
boy, what's this? Well, what is he gonna do to us? And I mean, he wanted us to make sure that we got ourselves sounding how we sound when we play together and we're practicing or on stage and are most comfortable.
Right.
And he was very, very explicit about us like not being too worried about being so um tight to the chest about that. We went in like we got to get this stuff done. He was just like breathe,
Right.
just
Yeah.
you sent me a demo. You have the goods. We're gonna
Yeah.
do this. So
You're
he
here. Just take your time and do it right. Just
yeah
focus on what you're doing, not on like how much time I have and like what's next. Like all of that stuff that everyone stresses about.
yeah. And he's a marathon man in that he does it's a 12-hour session. Like Don will
Mm.
roll in at 1 p.m. and Don will work with you until 1 a.m. Will you take a break and make an extra coffee maybe you didn't think you needed, but just to change that space,
Sure.
like to
Yeah.
allow room. There is no rushing there, and there is a real feeling of magic in that, like the walls have seen a lot. The walls have produced a lot. I mean,
And they've
and
absorbed. They have absorbed all that previous energy and God knows what else.
I mean, it was such a mind-blowing dream come true when the dream came true for us. And like I said, I don't want to act as if we slayed a gatekeeper here or we were like handpicked in some way. Don is a working man's engineer, brilliant recordist, and he wants to work with people that are excited to do what they're doing. So
Hmm.
I'm not trying to play it off like, we're the only ones who ever did this. Like he was open to working with us, and we were
No,
very
I get
fortunate
that.
in that respect. And we were also willing to hop on it, go down there, like put it our first priority, pay the bill. It's not like it did cost something.
Yeah.
We got to cut to tape, which was something that was mind blowing. Our first sessions there, we cut all to tape. We
Hmm.
couldn't believe it. Like it was 2010, and he was like, we were cutting to tape, and then he was dumping it over and would mix it digitally. Um,
Nice.
and his mixing process too. I'll say, he let us run around like kids in the sandbox all week tracking, play with everything we could, do things that would be rule breakers in the studio. Like, for instance, there was this song on Manic Children and the Slow Aggression called It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To. It's the last song on the album. It's a
Yep.
wild one.
Hmm.
I was at the time, just getting my bearings along and don't know everything that I need to know about being in the studio. And especially what should be obvious is that I don't need to have my amplifier pumped to an insane level per se in order to capture what I need to capture. I'm not trying to overpower a small room in a crowd. I'm in inner ear, like, I mean, it's all good. So Don was trying to explain to me, and I at the time was like a volume nut, thinking it must be a certain way. And Don wasn't fighting me. Don was just like, I want you to set it the way you want to set it. And on that song specifically, while we were recording, I went over and adjusted the volume and like turned it up and like looked at him. And instead of him like looking at me like, why would you turn up an amplifier that we've mic'd halfway through a take? Are you are you as stupid as you look? No, he didn't, he accepted it. He looked at me
Yeah.
like, okay. And to be honest with you, I feel like that portion, there's a certain, like, when I'm doing a palm mute in between this like chugga chugga of chorus part, there's
Hmm.
a there's this high pitched feedback that I was hoping for. I can't say that I achieved the feedback I was aiming for, because that's like trying to say like I made that sneeze feel like I wanted it to. Like, it's out of my hands. Every sneeze is
Sure.
the same. Feedback is feedback. I don't know how to manipulate it to have it sound right, but turning it up kind of worked. And Don, could have really poo-pooed that. And
Hmm.
instead, like when we were joking around recently at that reading, he mentioned that,
Huh.
like, and so he allowed us to really get to play and
Yeah.
get at play. But when he got to the mixing, um, he said, "You know what, guys? Let me have a crack at the mixes. Why don't you hang out in the lounge, and I'll call you when I'm ready." And it was
Okay.
like kind of like, okay, now Dad wants to do the work. The kids can go
Sure.
inside and
Yeah. Yeah.
watch the TV shows. And we went back in to the first mix, and we're like, "Oh my God, if this is what happens when we leave you alone to mix, Don, then we're
Right.
not going to
Right.
bother you anymore." I mean,
Well,
so it
that's
was.
pretty impressive because like it shows that he's first of all listening acutely to what you're doing as opposed to just a person that's like hit the button, okay, go guys, do your thing, and then learns kind of like a collaborator, kind of like a person that's in your band. Is just like learns to dance with what you're giving. It's just like, oh, you're gonna go up, okay, I'm gonna push back a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna maybe bring the faders back a little bit, or at least he knows in his mind, it's like in the mix, I know where to fix this fucking thing. Maybe,
Totally,
so that he
totally.
so that he didn't have to be like, no, 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 don't do this, because like we're gonna have to restart from the beginning, because then, just to save himself some aggravation in the mix where it's just like, oh, I gotta fucking, maybe splice that tape and kind of, drop the levels like when he turned it up and shit like that. It's just like, no, he just knew what to do. He's a professional.
He knew what to do, and
Exactly.
moreover, the way we did the vocals on that, I'll leave it at this. I've never had, he insisted I print him out all of the lyrics,
Hmm.
and he had them on his lap, and we would stop and go back, and at certain points go line by line, not for a perfection, but just in an area where he felt like, you know what, having a variation to choose from later on in the mix, why don't we give me that line again? Like, he
Hmm.
really got, like a collaborator, got really in bed with the material when it came down to the meticulous details. Like when it came, like I needed to do guitar overdubs, and I was very young to the studio, didn't know what to do, and I was using a Marshall head and a Marshall amp, pumped, and I needed to
Hmm.
manicure. And he pulled a Vox amp out that I had never used, an AC30, and he kind of like set the knobs in a way I probably wouldn't have set them. And those overdubs spoke volumes to the overall contours, to the
Hmm.
face of the
Yeah,
recording. So Don knew what he was doing, and he's done a lot of great work.
that's
And
great.
it's an honor to have done some work with him.
Yeah.
And the album we're going to talk about tonight again ties into that, and that's a huge part of my life, and really
Yeah.
important. So that's why I wanted to discuss it at length with you further.
Sure. Well, thank you for sharing that story because it really kind of puts it into perspective. I mean, I know things that he's recorded in the past. Like, sure, I mean, whenever you're talking about an engineer, you don't necessarily kind of put the average listener won't put much weight behind that. They'll just be like, oh yeah, okay, they recorded at this studio. Sure, they recorded this guy. Whatever, doesn't matter. Sounds great. But in the perspective that you're giving me, and now thinking about this album, which I've just researched pretty thoroughly, by a band that I love, and who I've also done research in the past. I've recovered end hits, and I've covered 13 songs on previous episodes. So I've always found this band to be enigmatic, kind of very hard to tackle, very hard to talk about for the most part. So it's helpful to kind of know that, to kind of get a feel for what maybe Don's role in this record was, and hearing it, and plus because there's a slight controversy about it, being that the band recorded this record prior with Steve Albini in Chicago, and they weren't happy with the results. They were wise enough to know that they could listen to these rough mixes, and it was just like, that's not the album. It's not what we need. Eventually going back to Don and his studio, where they were familiar, they've worked in the past and had great results with, and bring back Ted Nicely from Repeater, right? He worked on Repeater. Yeah. So so it totally speaks to all of that. So we should just go ahead and try to get into it. So we're talking about Fugazi's In On The Killtaker, which was released in 1993. So where were you in 1993? What were you doing? How did you get turned on to this?
In 1993, that was the summer I would turn 15, not long after purchasing this recording. I believe the actual release date is June 30th, 1993. I'm a wild date person. I'm not saying I specifically remember that release date. It just passed its 30-year anniversary mark, but I do vividly remember where I was and what was going on in my life. I had just made the decision within the last year or two previous to this that I was focusing all my power, all my strength, all my energy, everything on doing music. Music wasn't something that entirely spoke to me or intoxicated me until a little bit later in my single digits, I'd say. So by the time I'm like turning 10 or 11 or 12, maybe music is starting to really engage me. But, it took a little while. But ultimately, there I am. I start to learn how to play guitar at 14. My father starts to teach me, and I get obsessed with creating music. And at the time, I'm learning how to play Neil Young songs, and I'm really drinking up all different types of music, especially. I had jumped in right when the giveaway point of Guns N' Roses and Appetite for Destruction and Nirvana and Nevermind. It's kind of like that window there with Guns N' Roses when I'm about 8, 9, or 10 years old really excites me for one of the first times, and it feels weird and dangerous, and I wonder what this music is, and I start to look in its direction, and it's on MTV in 1989. That's a source. This is pre-internet, and I start to try to find magazines and soak up information, like the mystique, get information. So that's a little bit of the story. So here we are. We mosey forward a few years, and it's the early 90s, and the grunge explosion happens. So Nirvana and Pearl Jam are both things that very much interest me, and I'm finding any magazines that they're in. In a circus magazine, the same circus magazine, I read an article where Kurt Cobain talked about Black Flag and Wipers and Scratch Acid. And I also read an article where Eddie Vedder talked about Fugazi, Minor Threat, and Ian MacKaye all in one little paragraph, while wearing a Butthole Surfers t-shirt, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So these things at the time, to me, as a 12 or 13-year-old, 91, 92, that was, I just found my next obsession. Now I have to find out who Black Flag is and what Scratch Acid is and what's this Fugazi and Ian MacKaye, whatever he said. He has a record label. Okay, there's no internet. I just need to keep my eyes wide open. And I'm again starting to read and find anything I can, and these things become like these holy grail pieces. I'm going to record stores for the first times. I'm looking at vinyls. I'm looking at CDs. It was a CD era. I'm getting drawn in by all this different intoxicating, like ephemera in a way, etc. That all these different things that are now not a part of our music experience, unfortunately. But there I go. It's the summer of 1993, and I'm doing my favorite thing. I took a walk to the closest record store. It's a hot summer night. I have my money from being a stock boy, maybe $15 in my pocket. I'm at the local Nobody Beats the Whiz, which was an appliance store back then, like a Best Buy, and they definitely had an entire music section. And I'm shocked as I find this CD in the F section. I find Fugazi, and I had read the name, and I was intrigued for so long, and suddenly the decision is made itself. I'm walking to the counter with In On The Killtaker in my hands. I don't have context that this is their third or fourth album, that Ian MacKaye, which I'm thinking it says MacKaye, I don't know that he was in Minor Threat. I don't know anything. It's 1993. I'm a 15-year-old in Brooklyn. I don't have an older brother who's feeding me information. I don't
Right.
have like someone in the scene. I'm not like, magically stepped backwards and shit into some wealth of like, coolness. I'm
Yeah.
just some, pubescent kid figuring out what I love and what turns me on. And music makes me feel free. It makes me feel excited. It makes me feel like anything could happen, and it makes me want to be around it. It makes me want to make it. It makes me feel better when things are bad. So I know I love
Hmm.
music, and I'm on this
Okay.
journey end over end.
Right.
So I find Fugazi, couldn't be more excited. I look at the cover. It looks like, I guess, the monument in DC at the time. I don't know that quite sunk into me. It was yellow, kind of colorful color.
Sure.
There's a bit of word collage as part of the back of the album that like really I thought was visual to my eye. I thought very cool. A bunch of word collage, and then sunken into the middle, the track listing, etc.
Hmm.
I was drawn in, and
Okay.
I found myself taking my few ruples, my few pence from my stock boy job, and going to the counter and paying for it and walking home as quickly as I could,
Yeah.
not knowing at all
So
what it
then you
was
put it
sounding like.
on. You put it
So
on. What
then,
happens?
at the time, I had just discovered as well the headphones listen. A stepfather at the time, my
Hmm.
mom's husband at the time, had headphones, and he would do headphones listens. And I was very interested in that because you could really kind of get up close and really engage and
Hmm.
listen closely. And also, you could put it on. It was probably maybe 10 o'clock at night, and I really wanted to listen to it and listen to it loud. So, first listen was on headphones. Dropped it in, dropped it on, and I'm immediately uh, intrigued. Facet Squared opens up, and there is, at the time, I didn't even know how they were getting the sound. It's feedback, but I believe it's a kill
Mm-hmm.
switch of sorts.
Toggle switch. Yeah. Toggle switch on
Yeah,
guitar, constantly
exactly.
turning on and off.
Turning on and off, and then playing off of that is this like little single string, single note riff going between like the high E on the 12th fret and an open E, just like a beep beep
Right.
beep beep, just a little
Yeah.
introduction. And suddenly, just like, what's going on here? I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued, and then movement starts to occur. Drums and bass come in together in this kind of way that kind of presents a framework and starts
Hmm.
to build a fever. The first 45 seconds or so is this starting from a tiny breadcrumb to there's now a flame and a boil. And I believe at about 45 or 48 seconds in, the entire band is at a fury and pulls out and
Right.
falls directly into what is the lead rhythmic figure on the rhythm guitar. I believe it's the Ian Mackay guitar, which is this chugging, interesting riff with a bit of a descending feeling to it that presents itself by itself. And then as soon as the vocals are ready to come in, a couple measures later, they all slam home with it. And at the time, it
Right.
sounded to me like literally the heaviest, most intense, important thing had occurred in my ears yet. And I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen. And this voice comes in shouting at me that
Hmm.
pride no longer has definition. I'm just like, what does this even mean? Everybody wears it. It always fits. State invoked by lack of position or something like that. I'm just like, oh, I'm underwater already. They've got me. The room is filled with water. I am in the Fugazi fish tank,
Hmm.
and I am really, really engaged. The song is exhilarating. It's maybe 2.5 minutes of punk, but with a moving chorus. Like they kind of like explodes out of this punk verse into
Right.
this like they could never like whatever he says, that they should never touch the ground or that whatever. And
Right.
then
Uh-huh.
irony is the refuge of the educated. I mean, like it's just I was immediately. It was like first round knockout. Like it was a standing 8 count immediately. I'm down. I don't know what's going on. I'm intrigued. The shouting guy is saying these slogany like lyrics that I'm into, and I've never been shouted out in such a way that I'm interested. What's going on? Before I know it, the song is coming on. I'm still thinking about how cool the intro was.
Yeah. And then
And
you get hit with the second wave.
exactly. And then you get hit with Public Witness Program, and the one of the glorious things right there comes right at you like a freight train opening. Snare hits coming right at you,
Right.
and then there's a different voice. Uh-oh.
Mm.
What's
Different
going on?
singer. Yeah.
The last guy was shouting at me, and it's a little bit of an acquired taste at first, but there was so much meaning behind his shout. I'm into it. But this guy's got a different tone. This guy sounds pretty fucking crazy too. Like, and he's going with a little bit more of the tuneful thing.
Yeah.
Like, and they just again, like, why does this sound so good? Oh, everyone is murdering it. I know that I felt like something important was happening to me,
Yeah.
that my mind was being opened entirely. But the point is, now I'm just trying to give some reference, like sonically, like I then find grunge and the Nirvanas and the Pearl Jams and the Alices in Chains and Soundgardens and Screaming Trees, and Neil Young was a big part of my guitar learning process. So I'm very open to all of the Neil Young stuff. But again, I've not heard anything yet in my listening experience in the summer of 1993, like what I'm explaining to you right now. It's cracking my head open,
absolutely, I bet,
like a melon, and blowing my mind.
Absolutely, and in the best of ways.
Yes.
So wait, now let's go back to Facet Squared. Okay, so you're putting this on, blowing your mind. Absolutely. I want to get into a little bit of the facts about the record. I mostly have facts, fewer questions than I have facts.
Okay, please, I'm open to any facts.
So Facet Squared, an interesting anecdote revealed by Joe Gross, the author of the 33 1/3 book about this album, was that this title was created by making an acronym out of the chorus part. So the chorus says, "Flags are such ugly things." So now it doesn't spell the word facet; it spells like FASUT. So I guess they took the pronunciation of that. So they said like facet. So they took the word facet, which is a real word, and they were like, well, let's call it facet, and they just kind of threw the squared in there. It was just like, well, let's call it Facet Squared. Sounds good, I guess. For no particular reason, just Facet Squared. Squared showed up.
I love it. I never knew what the title was. It was a really great opening song title, like Facet Squared. I'm in. Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool to think that there's a tie-in and that there's more behind it, of course.
Well, I mean, maybe, of course, who knows? I mean, it's so strange to name a song, especially when it doesn't necessarily derive from anything. I mean, this band, from what I've learned doing the research about this album, is notorious for holding on to just like random, like working titles forever until like maybe the moment before it goes off to press or something, and then they'll change it for a reason. Like, it's one of the quieter ones. Was it Returning the Screw? That starts off, it sounds like chimps screaming or something?
No, the one that starts off like chimp screaming is Walken's Syndrome.
Walken Syndrome. Okay, so that one was originally, the working title for that one was Chimps. Because of that intro.
It's so funny. When I was doing a re-listen earlier today, and that song specifically, I was like, how do I impart later that this opening, if I have to describe it, does sound not just like a zoo, but chimps. It does. It sounds like chimps or monkeys of some sort. The screaming and the howls there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. And so I mean, so they're just weird like that as far as lyric naming is concerned. So now, kind of turning this around back to you, most of your song titles certainly seem relative to your lyrics, from what I can gather, from what I understand and what I've heard. But has there been anything you could say that came from somewhere more nonsensical?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we might have, in terms of the nonsensical, I'm pretty sure there's a song that was on the Manic Children and the Slow Aggression album that we talked about, that we did with Don Z, and it was also a part of our set for quite a while, called Day Leash. And I think that we kind of, were saying that, like, the leash of the day, or maybe it was about some sort of addictive qualities. But it started off because we said the riff was the leash. The riff was the leash.
The leash.
So the riff was delicious. And we were saying the riff is the leash. It's the leash. And we just kept on saying, like I guess, like, when Chris Farley and David Spade are in the car and they're like, roads, roads, Roads. I don't know if you've seen Black Sheep. That might be that movie, but
Yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty sure they find a stash of the good earth, and
Oh, okay.
they might roast a bean or two, smoke a
Sure.
bowl, and I think the cops stopped them because they're doing like 4 miles an hour, and they are tripping out on just the word roads.
Oh,
So I think
yeah.
that Paul and I, and they're like saying roads, roads. I think Paul and I, in the delirious long drive to one of those Plaza Bowl gigs in Richmond, Virginia on a Sunday in 2009 when no one wanted us there and we just needed to be somewhere to play. When we were talking about the new material, we kept on saying, but that one, that's delish. That's delish. And it just started to become delish. And we both
Delish.
thought it sounded hilarious. It's not really that funny out of context now. I'm telling you, I have better material. I just,
Sure. No.
I don't have it prepared, evidently. But that then we morphed it into dayleash. And, and I guess we told the tale of like, oh, it's about an addiction or something. But it really was because we were calling
Hmm.
it delish. It
Oh,
was
okay.
delish. So
Nice.
that's the one nonsensical one that my mind pops to that I don't think we've ever even told anybody that. But it was
Sure.
delish. It was
Who's ever asked is
delish.
just like that song Dalish on that album, that first album of yours, pretty stellar. Where does that? What do you even mean?
Tasty.
Nice. Okay. I thought that was like your inner good fella coming out or something. Like Delish. That's your Delish, man.
I am half Italian, and as is Paul. We are cousins, and our lineage is connected by my mother and his father are brother and sister, and
Hmm.
that's our Italian side, the Claro side of the family. Paul's last name is Claro. His he's his father is Italian and his mom is Irish, and my mom is Italian, his father's sister, and then my dad was of Polish and Hungarian Jewish descent. But nonetheless, we share that Italian. So there is a little bit
Hmm.
of a once in a while, a little bit of this,
Yeah.
a
Okay.
little bit of the old, hey, oh, wait, hey, hello, a
Speaking of
little bit
which,
of
we're
that.
talking about Fugazi. I mean, this is
Hey,
the band Fugazi. I
exactly.
love this
I
band.
Let me tell you something. I was so wild in my pursuit of all things Fugazi. There
Fugazi,
was
you mean?
Yeah, exactly. This plays in. This plays in. There was they famously didn't do merch, but there was a shirt that they deemed to be an official shirt that was a shirt that said this is not a Fugazi t-shirt. It
Hmm.
actually was available. You could find it. I found it in Manhattan in the middle to late 90s at a t-shirt and head shop, etc. And I bought it thrilled. I finally found the Fugazi t-shirt, etc. And in 1997, Donnie Brasco came out, a film about the mob
Love
with
it.
Al
Love that
Pacino
movie.
and Johnny Depp. Really good, really good.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, Bruno Kirby and Michael Madsen, Sonny Black, Sonny Red. Anyway, in it, there's a scene where the word fugazi is
That's right.
utilized to say it's a fake of some sort of diamond. I then, after that, would walk around my neighborhood and I would have my Fugazi t shirt and it would constantly have people say, oh, it's a Fugazi. That was something I encountered left, right, and center. And it
Yeah.
was, I mean, it was definitely, it's funny too. And it took forever for me to, I think, I finally saw the Instrument documentary, which is a really great documentary about the band Fugazi that's culled from lots of years of their live footage, etc. And I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure in that documentary, they reveal the Fugazi is an acronym itself for fucked
Yeah.
up, got ambushed, zipped in, or
Right.
something along those lines, like a term, a war term, etc.
Yeah.
So
Which
yeah,
is not verified. No one knows if that's true. It's like
exactly.
they threw it in there, but they themselves can't even like corroborate the authenticity of that acronym.
The mystique. What I
Yeah.
love is there's mystique. It's like that's what's missing. I think a lot from not to sound like a 44-year-old. That's what's missing from now. I love now. I love then. I love that I'm alive. Who cares
Yeah.
about my opinions about how I consume things? But the point is the mystique that was involved, the journey, the questions that still would arise, or what do
Hmm.
they look like, or how do they present this? It was a part of the things that really kind of helped you to get carried away and lost in the whole art of it all. And I
Sure.
feel like that's been a little bit robbed by now. If you find out a band's name, you can find out all this information before you even listen to more than a half of
Right.
song. You could be
Right.
like, well, you know what, I know enough. I don't need to
Right.
hear anything. Like that's tough because it's like back then it was a little bit more like, oh, this is exciting me sonically. I'm in.
Right.
What more can I find out?
And now you know that shirt you bought was a Fugazi.
It was a Fugazi after all. Mm.
Right. Fitting. All right, let's keep on moving. Let's move
Okay.
on to the next song, Public Witness Program. Guy said that he didn't know where he got the idea, but that it was essentially about this mythical government program that was established to create a civic surveillance group.
I mean, I definitely got the feeling like it was some sort of a commentary on I guess civic governmental jury type of things. It was again Fugazi and the band's Bad Religion that I got into not too long after this in the '90s were the first bands that inspired me to pick up a dictionary at times when I looked through the lyrics. But Public Witness seemed to be like I mean the eyes have it and the eyes always will. The eyes have it and they're watching still. Like I mean you'll see tonight. Like I mean I'm hooked in. I'm hooked in by the poetry in that.
It's a great song too. It's just so energetic, just so crazy.
It keeps the energy. It taught me a lot about the sequencing or choices of sequencing for albums because Facet Squared is this event like intro song that has like I said a whole 45-second swell until like curtains pull, production begins, and here comes the color, and they really kind of like levitate a bit, and then for them to pull that in and roll over into a second song that comes directly at you and also keeps it short and tight. I mean, if this song is 2 minutes long, it's maybe 2 minutes and 5 seconds. I'm not sure, but
2 minutes and 4. Very close. Very good.
Yeah, it's there. There you go. There you go. The urgency of Guy's vocals really, the way his approach, and the fact that this is the first song where he's now singing, and that was also something like I said, like that knocked me over too. Like I was caught off guard. Here I am with another vocalist who's equally as strong, but producing something entirely differently. What's going to happen when they interact, which happens at different points, throughout the album where they back each other up. But I remember the allure of the Ian songs because I had read the little tiny blurb that mentioned Ian MacKaye with his two bands, Fugazi and Minor Threat, and he ran a record label. So it seemed like there's a weightiness to whatever that guy's contribution is here is what I was thinking on the small bits of information I had. So it really shocked me and knocked me over that, the other guy is just as good. I mean, such a fantastic band.
Absolutely. I can't deny that. So back to this song. So the idea that's kind of written in this like kind of Philip K. Dickish type of scenario, sci-fi, apocalyptic thing that he was kind of writing from. How do you feel about living in that sci-fi reality now?
It's a wild reality we wound up in now. It is. I mean,
Well, it seems prophetic in a sense. Like, I mean, we're not paid to surveillance each other, but at the same time, we are watching each other constantly.
I mean, it's all that we really do. I mean, prophetic for sure. I mean, there's such an intelligence to everything that Fugazi did sonically and lyrically. I mean, it's just, I mean, the fact that the music can sound as just as fresh and just as genreless and just as head and shoulders above much other things that I've listened to over the last 30 years still. But the fact that lyrics could come off prophetic, like I learned history lessons during this, like smallpox champion, and the stuff that goes on there with the American Indian, etc. Like, this was just like, again, I knew I was in an important class that night that I bought this album and I turned it on and like these individuals are teaching me and I need to learn. And here we are 30 years later. We're in a surveillance culture 100%. I mean, you literally could not walk down your street and I mean, if you threw a piece of trash that missed the trash can, I mean, I don't like litter. I would likely stop and pick it up and put it back in, but we're not all perfect. We might be having a little bit of a rough day. Maybe the 10th time, we might let that piece of trash be on the floor, but someone would have seen it because everything everywhere is recorded. You have to
Right.
just assume that everyone knows,
Right.
like you're on the record.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you, man. All right, well, let's keep on moving. Let's get to Returning the Screw. Um, so now I have no hard facts about this song, but according to Joe Gross again, Ian was clearly pissed, but about what he could not recall at the time that he was being interviewed for that book. So, can you tell me about something that really grinds your gears?
I mean, what grinds my gears that we're we've suffered the full effect of capitalism to the point that there is absolutely positively no way, shape, or form that there's room for the artistic expression or the artistic side of yourself to have the time that it requires to run freely.
Hmm.
We have to have an occupation that most likely is one that has nothing at all to do with any of our loves or likes. It's just one that has to be in place and occupy more than 3/4 of our time to give us just the right amount of money to not have enough money to free ourselves from this system that it's created. It turns the whole like college degree certificate into a scam that keeps you in debt for the rest of your life. I remember, college was a rarity when I was a little kid or when I was, really young. Like not everyone went to college. Then every single person goes, and it's just a way for you to automatically have huge credit debt and a piece of paper that doesn't necessarily get you what you think it was going to. It just seems as though whatever occurred in the 80s slash Reagan slash whatever recalibrating of all of the wealth, but when everything went tax wise to like the rich have everything and the working class is poor and we're stuck. It doesn't
Hmm.
seem like there's inroads out of that, and there's so much division now over everything. We just take for granted this automatic contract we sign off that most of our life and the real solid living years that we're healthy, we're going to be partaking in this system that
Yeah.
we didn't have a hand in creating, that we don't have much sway in changing, that we constantly are, there's a carrot in front of us that dangles where we're told we can affect and we can cause change. We're
Hmm.
told a lot of things that keep us going on this wheel. It really, that's what grinds my gears. And then you come to also love your cell. You come to love your prison. You come to find a way to, if you have a job that isn't quite what you like, you find the things that you like about it because you don't want to live a miserable life. You're going to have to
Sure.
go to that place. You're going to have to make it work. There's no way to work around it. You're going to have to get up and go somewhere and work and be a part of society. And again, I don't want to, I'm not trying to be super controversial and tell people to not like do what they have to do. Do what you have to do. I mean,
Oh,
but
you
it's
have
just,
to.
it feels rough that it's dictated to,
You,
like there
you you
isn't,
don't have to tell anybody. Everybody knows. Everybody's like, we're fucked. We know
we don't talk
it.
about it. We've just
Nobody talk
accepted
because
it,
everyone you don't want to
like,
live. You don't walk around depressed. I don't want to
yeah,
talk about it. Yeah, buddy,
yeah,
we're fucked, man. Hey, we're just like living the dream,
yeah,
this nightmare of just getting fucked repeatedly over and
yeah.
over every day.
That's why I throw myself so far into the music and with such fervor and with everything I have and with all my excitement, because all my joy is really comes to life there in that world. And I also don't want to walk around depressed. I find the good in it all.
Sure.
But I definitely, every once in a while, like step back and say, huh, it could be better than this. Like we didn't have to decide we have to pay for land that no one can actually own. We didn't have to decide that, like, if you get sick, you're going to go into debt and die. Like
Right, right.
it could be
So
better. So those
someone
things,
got there before you did. That's the problem.
yeah,
Some
someone
other
got there
fucking
with it.
genius was just like, you know what we should do here to make us a lot of money? And it's just like, but no one else will be able to afford it after you do that. It's just like, I don't fucking care.
Welcome. Yeah.
Hey, too bad you didn't think of it.
Natural selection,
Yeah.
Bobo. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. The strong
So there's a
survive, I guess.
there's a gear grinder. Sorry, I
I
didn't
hear
mean to
you.
get crazy, everybody, but I am certifiably sick, so that was
Yeah.
actually very PG.
Sure. No, I hear that, and I agree with you. Unfortunately, it's very true. So leading to another equally kind of gear grinding and disgusting song, you got Smallpox Champion, which is a great song. I fucking love this song, and this is actually only one of the only songs off this record that I knew for the longest time, because
Really?
my introduction to this record was actually through a promo cassette tape, which was a 5-track demo that was the same program on both sides, and that's all I had for years. And I would just jam it into the tape player and just be like, "Yep, play it again, play it again." And so I only knew 5 songs, and then I only finally listened to this record like not too long ago, really. I mean, I'm fairly new to Fugazi,
Gotcha.
but
Yeah.
this song, amazing. Never
Uh,
knew the context. Never knew the context of the lyrics in this song, which is it's dark. It's very much calling out kind of human behavior and uh, I don't know, American settlers disgusting genocidal behavior towards Native Americans.
yeah. I mean, holy mackerel. To get back to the beginning of what you said, I mean, just sonically, just
Mm-hmm.
as a song, it's a fantastic rendering. It is a fantastic song. It starts with this kind of almost like it grabs you a little bit by the shirt collar of some sort sonically, and it takes off into like a kind of rabid punk song, but that gives way to with I could only say like a really great, almost uplifting sounding chorus. There's this kind of shift there, maybe two-thirds of the way through the song, where they're kind of readjusting and getting ready to do this cha 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 champion
Right.
part, where
Yeah.
they musically pivot, and they start to almost ride what sounds like a little bit of an octave chord going high, and they're setting you up for that. But they've grabbed the idea and they play with the dynamics of it a bit, and then they boot it up even higher. And Guy comes in and they really ride out the last 45 seconds,
Right.
almost in a celebratory,
Huh.
celebratory manner with this Cha Cha Champion. At the time, like it kind of jumped out to me. I mean, I was in you're in high school, you're learning a version, the high school version of history, etc. But you also,
Yeah.
like, there's there's the renegade cool high school history teacher who like wants to go off record and let you know what's going on because he or she or they don't care. This class doesn't care about what they're saying. So, it might have been Mr. Wiener. I mean, I'm not making up a name. There was I went to a high school called South Shore High School in the Canarsie part of Brooklyn. It was
Uh-huh.
a tough high school at the time in the 90s. I was one of the few kids that had long hair.
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely, ridiculed for it, etc. I wasn't quite a part of the cool crowd,
Not
nonetheless.
as
But hey,
bad as Mr.
high
Wiener, I
school.
don't think.
Mr. Wiener got it worse.
I
So,
bet.
like, when we were in his history class, like, everyone hated him. Everyone made fun of him. Like, I guess I felt like I belonged there because at least the teacher was getting it worse. And I'm sure he told us some American history truths that weren't in the curriculum.
Hmm.
I mean, and this idea about what was done to the natives that were here. Oh my God. Like we got to
Mm-hmm.
always remember, we talk about, I mean, I've got a chance to do a lot of traveling because of music, 11 countries, done like 500 shows all over the place, blah, blah, blah. Done a lot of traveling. People in America are generally, often think like other places are scary. And because fear and being scared is a part of the experience of being alive. So,
Sure.
but I'm just saying, so when applied to anything that's new to you, you can have a fear, etc. But there are some people in America who tend to think that other places are scary. I've been to many other places. It's funny when you go to these other places, they really think, "Holy cow, you're from America? It's it's pretty wild there. Like like what's it like?
Yeah.
They like this is."
It's
This is
scary.
a scary place that's based on
Yeah.
a lot of absolute insanity. We might have ways to dress things up and talk about them, however, but more and more things come to the surface now as time continues to progress forward, and more people have voices that are heard, and there's more of a continued melting of the pot, and more of everyone come around. And there's more of a fairness to the conversations that's occurring, where more voices are heard now. But it wasn't like that, and it's not easy for it to even be like that now. There's a lot of blood and hell and wildness that occurs because of it. So for Fugazi to like be on the front line, be a DC band, and be willing to like be political in a sense that they have their own ethos to begin with, that they have a stance and a posture in how they do their business. Like they only play all ages places. They don't do interviews with magazines because magazines have advertisements in them. Like, who is doing this? Fugazi is evidently, I mean, but
the only band to do it.
For them to have an absolute anthemic, pump your fist, screaming song 4 songs into the album that's like it has to do with genocide of the American Indian and smallpox being spread to, I mean, how that can exist. But it's a fantastic song with a heavy message. But yeah, I had to note that like there's the closing minute, they do this musical shift and this pivot, and then they elevate into this
so great
anthem, and you're just like, this is everything that I want right now.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Fucking it's powerful. I love it. Love that song. I don't really have a question for you for it. So we're gonna move on to the next thing, Rend It, which also I don't have a question for. The only thing I want to say about this song is that I've discovered something about Fugazi and Guy Picciotto specifically, because I remember specifically speaking to Joyce Raskin about 13 songs. And I was doing the research. I was like, getting into that album and just kind of like living it and breathing it and eating it like all day. And I was just like, there was one song on that album, and I can't remember the song right now. If I go back to the conversation, I can fucking hear it. But there was one song which I brought up to her attention. I was just like, is this a love song? Like, is it possible that Fugazi wrote a fucking love song? Because I mean, like, if you really analyze the lyrics, I was just like, I think this is about like some kind of misplaced romance thing, like some unrequited love thing, which is totally off brand for Fugazi. But this song, Rend It, from what I hear from an interview with Guy, it was like the only song he didn't have anything to say about because it was like too personal. It was a personal expression, according to the interview that I heard. And so he didn't really have anything to say about it unless he was being asked directly, and there was no direct question. So it kind of makes me think, the last line in the song is, my love song went wrong, wrong, wrong. And that's all he had to say about it. So I was just like, this is a fucking love song. You do write love songs.
Yeah. You know what? That's a real good take. That's a real good take, because I mean, that closing line, my love song went wrong, I mean, it's kind of describing this kind of like, come to me, be with me, this kind of on the edge, feeling is being put forth by the narrator. I mean, it starts it starts off with this absolutely amazing snare hit / guitar stab. This it's this kind of, it plays games with you. It's just like it immediately disorients you. It's like Rowdy Piper pokes his opponent in the eyes, and like you can't see. It's like immediately, bing, oh, now I can't see, and they're batting my head against the wall. And I guess maybe further to convey the intimacy of a love song, they clang away in the beginning and put those bells in your ears, and then they entirely scoop the music out.
Right.
And there is an impassioned kind of plea. Why don't you come to my house? Why don't you drag me right out past all the shit that I said I'm saying? Why don't you cut up my mouth? That's a cappella. That's Guy's just voice. So right there's an intimacy, an engagement level that kind of says, I mean, love song, whether it's broken love song or not. And also, I mean, I'll say this, I'd mentioned earlier, the Fugazi movie Instrument has the soundtrack. They released, I believe in '99, Instrument came out. So in Fugazi's, collection of albums that fits in after End Hits in 1998 and before The Argument in '01, or '02, that's the last one. There's a demo of Rend It
Mm-hmm.
on that. And when you really get down to it, it is definitely a broken, sad, like like post-love type of love song. It's this
Mm-hmm.
really quiet, watery acoustic.
Yeah.
There isn't the big stabbing, clanging
Well,
introduction.
that's the thing
There's
about Guy's songs. The other thing he mentioned in this interview is that all of the songs that he wrote for this album, he composed on acoustic guitar.
Oh wow, I never knew that, and that makes
Yeah.
sense because I know for sure that
So
that demo of this.
that demo,
Wow,
all the songs that are on this that he wrote started like that. So
wow.
the band kind of like when he brings it into the band, obviously it takes on a whole new life. Even in this song itself kind of took on a whole new life. But when you hear the acoustic demo version of it, which is like the initial kind of like creation of it, it's just like you definitely hear, hey, this could definitely be like an emo song. This is definitely like kind of in that vein of the singer songwriter kind of quiet, like really, really reserved thing, and I think that that's how it seems that that's the way he writes.
Yeah, I didn't know that fact. It's fun to hear it now. I did know that when I heard the demo on instrument, years
Mm-hmm.
after hearing the original, I the contrast was huge, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, I wonder the process. I guess these songs do germinate in different ways, and some might come just from acoustic. But I mean,
Yeah.
it does lend itself a bit to, like, I mean, I can understand that, that adds a little bit of perspective here. So like a song we'll get to later on, Last Chance for a Slow Dance, that's a Gee song. And that sounds like
Mm-hmm.
something that could have been put together maybe on an acoustic. There's some
Yep.
the chords that move through it. We'll talk about it when we get to it, but
I
that's
guess all of
interesting
them.
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, to connect that. Yeah, Gee's quite a contributor. And Rend It, I mean, both versions are really stellar, but the version that turned out on In On The Killtaker, this is it's it makes itself known.
Mm-hmm.
It resonates, it reverberates.
Yeah.
When he's finally, my love song went wrong at the very end. They're lurching and stopping and lurching and stopping and punctuating in such a way that he means what he's saying, and the band is making sure that you'll remember it.
Hmm. Well said. I agree with that. Um, Look, I'm going to skip a couple songs. I'm going to skip 23 Beats Off, not because it's not a good song, just don't really have anything I want to tackle about it. I actually have some stuff there, but it's a little too it's a little too much. Okay, so Sweet and Low we're going to pass to just because it's an acoustic. I mean, it's a, instrumental for the most part. It's a great song, but
Yeah.
nothing really there. So the next song after that it would be Cassavetes.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly an ode to John Cassavetes, the iconic film actor and director.
Mm-hmm.
Leads me to ask, your band being called Cinema Cinema, are you a film buff?
You know, um, it grew from the love of film. It did. The name of the band itself, I'll tell you where it came from, and it comes from a film.
The Turkish film from 1976.
Oh no, French film from 1993.
Oh, weird. Okay. That's just, I
Yeah,
happened to find it on like just kind of Googling, it came up. It was just like, oh, that's weird.
yeah, it's 1993. Actually, it's 1992. A Belgian film from 1992. I saw it in 1993, the same year I got into the album we're
Ah,
talking about. But
right.
the film is Man Bites Dog, which was we utilized that film's title as the name of our 2017 release, our fourth
Okay.
album. We felt like it was time to finally pin the tail on the donkey in terms of letting people know where the name of the band came from. Man Bites Dog is a 1992 Belgian black comedy, a mock documentary, if you will, a Spinal Tap of sorts, but it revolves, instead of around a failing band, it revolves around a failing serial killer. At the time, my little 15-year-old brain, who was finding out about Fugazi and all these other things, thought, as I watched the movie, like, oh, I think that'd be a cool name for a band. And I filed it away in my head, like, I'm going to name my band Cinema Cinema one day.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
ultimately, I did go on to be, film was a big part of my love through the '90s, and I did actually study it for a short while in college before I quit college.
Hmm.
But somewhere along the way over the last, 20 years or so, I've just been so crazed in music that my embracing of it and really watching and studying everything like I wanted to at that point has gone south. But I do
Sure.
love film. Cassavetes itself, I don't have a lot to say about his work in those films.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I spent a lot of time really losing myself in the Stanley Kubrick world, and
Sure.
like trying to write these long papers on The Shining and these hidden meanings
Yeah.
that I was convinced that only I was finding out and only I knew. But yeah, the cinema comes from a film, and it is a film from back then, and I was for quite a while there in my early where I just wanted to read every book, see every movie, listen to every band.
Of course.
That's what
Yeah.
my teenage years were. It was so
Drink it up.
important, so important. All these years later, 100,000 years later, it seems like television series doled out in this streaming way where you get
Hmm.
a binge is kind
Yeah.
of taken the place a bit of how we consume um different pieces of
Sure. Sure.
entertainment in that way.
So follow up question to that was, does your music have anything to do with film, or do you ever kind of consider film like when making music?
I definitely feel like we're crafting a soundtrack to the emotional moments of our life when we're writing. Being that we don't subscribe to a certain genre, I think that when we're creating, we're kind of really inspired about the things that grind our gears,
Hmm.
or the things that happened in our day, or the losses that we experienced, or the way we feel about being an artist and what that takes out of you, or what's happened on the road and what story we never told, and what inspiration is burning in our stomach from this or that or the other. So it's
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's kind of like yeah, the crafting of the sounds, it's a bit like soundtracking our emotions. So I know we definitely like to let the music do a lot of the talking. We do like to make sure that it has its place.
Hmm.
We've definitely made space at times. Our CCXMD and CCXMD2 albums, which are our explorations into these free jazz leaning territories. I know we reduced some vocals to make sure that the horns could be more the vocals there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we've tried to, we try to really make space for the music to have its own characteristics that are true to what we're feeling when we create it. And I think that's part of the reason why we're genreified across 5 different genres. This album's this way. I think had we had a hit along the way, maybe we would have felt compelled to make sure
Hmm.
we stay in a lane. But
Sure.
the good thing I could tell you is when you never have a hit, you can just do whatever you want.
Right.
So I mean, and there's a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're soundtracking our own little movie that's never been shot yet, but it's in our mind.
Maybe one day. I have
Yeah.
another music related question for you, based on the next song, "Great Cop." The little blurb I have about this says that one of the oldest riffs recycled from very early days in Ian's music career. It has first been recorded in a demo in 1991. Uh, that can't be right, not 91. For one of Ian's older bands, Skewbald. So
Yeah.
so Skewbald actually started like they started in 1981. So I'm assuming that
Oh.
must have been a demo around 81, and then again during Embrace's days kind of came up again in some demos, and then
Mhm.
not only until 93 finally on this album does it finally make a proper appearance as a full song. So I was just curious, have you ever recycled any old ideas or any old riffs?
Huh. Yeah, that's a good one. I would say that we wound up when we made a night at the fights. There was one song. A night at the fights is 2014. There was one song at the very end of that. Our pre-production, whatever you want to call it. We spent months and months incubating that material. It was one of the times where we went into the studio specifically with the sound in our head and with the songs laid out and arranged very strict in the structure. With the night at the fights, we've learned to approach different recordings different ways. And we did that. It was the first album working with Martin, and at his suggestion, when we went to do Man Bites Dog after that, um we weren't quite as prepared. He said maybe leave a little extra room for studio magic. Don't bake the cookies all the way, but with the Night of the Fights, we really baked those cookies, and they were shaped. They were Christmas cookies, and it was going to have to be a certain color and a certain shape. And Martin was there to achieve it all with us. And as we got to the end of the writing, we had started to work on this song that I was calling Piranha. I phonetically at one point was saying the piranha. I think like it just because I couldn't get the words, but the word piranha kept on going into it, and I thought that's piranha is a cool name, and we really liked it. But ultimately, it just didn't materialize and didn't come together. And when we went into the process to make Man Bites Dog, the follow up to that, Martin had urged us to not be as prepared, to not cook all the cookies until they were perfect, etc., to come in with a little more space for some decisions to be made in the studio, maybe even, like some arrangement decisions, etc.
He wanted to take more of a production role in that
album. Exactly, with Man Bites Dog. So we had finished doing a big tour. I say big because Black Flag had invited us to open 45 dates of their North American tour in 2014, their Victimology tour. And that for us was absolutely humongous. A band that plays basements to 50 or 60 or 75 people usually, or bars to 150 people, going and playing like House of Blues sized venues, etc., across the entire country. That was really huge for us. So it just so happened we had done that tour, and at the end of the tour, we had released A Night at the Fights, but we had gotten this momentum where we did a bunch of touring in Europe right after that, and a lot of like doorways were seeming to open for us nicely because of the Black Flag rub and connection, and we felt like we needed to make a new album. We had met a label in Europe who had distribution in Europe, and they wanted to work with us regardless of what we were going to do. They were like, we don't care what your next album sounds like. We're into working with you. So, and Martin was like, when you come back next time, come back not as prepared. And we were just like, okay, let's be crazy and like not prepare too much, but make an album really soon. So we started to like cook up a lot of ideas for Man Bites Dog, and I'd say that we were in the final process the days before we were going in, and we just realized like, okay, we're a little underprepared in that we need another song at least here. We can't go in with X amount of songs. We need one more. And that's when we remembered Piranha, and Piranha got a riff added to it, and it became a song called Run Until You're Out. And Run Until You're Out is a prominent song on Man Bites Dog, actually. It's the second song on the album, so sequence-wise, we put it towards the front. We made a video for it. It's one that we had in the set for a little while. So that was a spot where we did recycle something, and it turned into a song that we like in the long run. So it's...
Nice. Okay, so it worked out. Cool. Yeah. But you don't do that often, I don't think.
No, we're always we always seem to be moving forward. If something doesn't kind of jump the curb, it doesn't get too many more chances, we're kind of on to the next one. That's how we've functioned over the years, and that's how we work.
That's cool. Hey, that works, man. It's great. We're gonna skip another song. We're gonna skip Walk-In Syndrome because I just don't have anything for it. Just a kind of weird, complicated song, not a weird random history that's involved with it. Nothing very direct or straight. So instrument, I have a bit of a thing here to read for you. So Ian says, the quote, there's a line from a Mississippi Fred McDowell album. Some people don't ever feel nothing until they lose someone in their family. Instrument is a song about that, end quote. So kind of a wild thing to think about, the idea of wanting an instrument to determine the value of loss.
This was always one of my favorite songs on the album. I didn't quite know why when I was young. I would say that it wasn't until when I was listening to it earlier today on my prepare for our engagement listen that I subjected myself to, that I planned on having today. When I was looking at the words, where I said to myself, I think that this is about the damage that's done that we don't really talk about when you lose someone, because you have to really just, say, well, we all lose people, and you have to go through your mourning and your process. When I was looking at the words, it seems to have some literal stuff in it,
Right. Yeah.
like we need, like we need to know value, we need to place value in case it all comes true. Like, we have to know if loss does weigh. And I was thinking like how maybe as a 15-year-old, I wasn't quite resonating as much with, if loss does weigh,
Hmm.
like, although those words sounded heavy to me, but now as a 44-year-old, in the last 3 years, I've lost my mother and my father.
Oh,
Um,
sorry.
you know, Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of
Again,
course.
we all, lose, it's a part of life. We lose people we love.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, a handful of the characters that raised me when I was a little kid, like grandparents and great uncles and aunts, I've lost them, like, etc. I've had my fair share.
Sure.
So it's really, really interesting to utilize a song to describe that. And I'm excited that you relayed that fact to me. Cause like I said earlier today, I was like, is this about like, like the, you
Yeah.
know, measuring how it is that we're affected when we lose someone? Like what is today, how loss weighs? That to me sounds like the loss of loved ones or individuals I can't interact with anymore. Like possessions don't matter. Like I'm not thinking about loss, how I lost $50, it weighs on
Right.
me. That's a part of that whole grind that doesn't matter.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
fake
Yeah.
world that they fooled me into believing.
Yeah.
But like, the real stuff, like, whoa, like, and the magical thing is like, we all have this shared experience. Like, you don't know the
Hmm.
person next to you on the train in the morning, how much their loss weighs, but it's weight, and
But
and
there's
they
something
deserve that
there.
same,
Yeah.
they deserve that same space and respect that you want to have for
Right.
your
Right.
loss. It's a shared life experience.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Even better perspective of it, I think, from what you're saying, and I imagine it has to do with your own loss. Obviously, you said that you've lost your parents, and that's a tragic one for sure, regardless of how old you are. And but so I'm curious if you've ever tackled that subject in your songwriting.
yeah, I mean, there's some brand new stuff that I actually was just listening to this morning. Um, we we made a record during the end of what, I mean, how can you qualify when the end of the pandemic was? The
when it
pandemic
when it
really,
became
really,
safe to get together again,
I mean,
or when it was allowed to get together again.
in March of 2020, everything changed and everything was frozen.
Yeah.
And I know that we had a lot of things going on and that we were planning to do next, etc. It was March of 2021. A year had elapsed. We had not done a gig. We had not done a thing. And we decided to go into the studio and record. The first thing we were doing was we were going to make a recording because we had so much inside of us, and that ultimately is going to be the next album. I was just listening to it's mixed. It's not mastered, and we have to go back and fix something I was hearing this morning. But that material comes from a real
Dark place.
well, a real emotional pit.
You mean what
And
we've all been feeling for the past 3 years?
yeah, yeah. Exactly. We
This
all have
really
this shared,
resonates with everybody. Trust me.
yeah, the shared experience. There's definitely some measuring of the loss and how it weighs in some of that brand new material. Like I can't really talk too much about it yet because it's not
Sure.
even out. But
Okay.
that's where I think it took a while, for certain loss, I guess, to make its way into my art. I know that like the pit that I draw from deep inside me goes all the way back to the earliest, gray-eyed memory of childhood, all the way on to what happened just yesterday. So there's a lot
Hmm.
that filters its way through. There's some subjects that I've been fighting my way through, and some justice I'm trying to find for myself, and peace of mind I'm trying to find when I lose myself vocally in some schizophrenic insanity where multiple personalities show up and there's lots of voices talking to each other. This occurs, but it's it's quite a ride. It's finally now, over these last few years, I think losing my parents, those losses, now it suddenly has started to seep in to my artistic expression, and that's why some of the new material has some stuff that draws on that.
Hmm.
So maybe in 2025 when the next record comes out, and maybe we're together again, and we're talking about one of the albums. I thought one of the runner-up albums that I didn't choose for today.
Sure.
We'll talk about some of the stuff where some of my art is reflecting some of that loss a little bit more, because there's some material on that new stuff where I definitely am emoting about that.
Okay. Sure, fair enough, and we'll do that. So just to wrap this up, the last song is Last Chance for a Slow Dance. And what I have to say about this is, according to Pace Magazine, it said lyrics mourn a self-destructive person who refused to ask for help. And I don't buy that. I don't completely agree with that statement as far as, what the lyrics of the song are stating. But I can say this. This is a pretty heavy album. It tackles a lot of heavy subjects, from loss of life, love, privacy, or even pride. So for a person who has clearly been pushing themselves creatively, I think it's safe to say you've even pushed yourself lyrically. And like we were just kind of touching on, you happen to mention that you already have a new album in the works. But I was going to ask, where do you think you go from here?
I mean, we are down the rabbit hole, and having fun down here. We seem to, the second we have a firm footing, there's a tectonic shift and plates move, and we fall further down the hole, and we love where we land because we stopped doing this art thing with the ceiling of expectations a while ago. When we got asked to do the Black Flag tour, it blew our minds, and we thought, oh my goodness, like this is it. Like this is the big break. And then for us, it was a huge break, and it opened up a lot of doors. But what happened was nothing changed about us as people. There isn't a plateau. There isn't a place that you go. You're still the person. If you hate things about yourself, even when you're doing the stuff that you love and it's at a higher level than you ever thought, you still wake up hating those things about yourself. It doesn't go away. And the things you love, that they're still there too. But there isn't a thing that clicks and changes. So our expectations for doing this as if it was a javelin we're trying to throw the longest way went away then, when we thought, we're not going to go automatically further up some ladder. This is probably maybe as good as it gets, and we can't believe that it's happening, and we're doing this because we love it. And my cousin and I do this because it keeps us sane. It's our therapy. So I think that once we let go of the expectations, it really got to be that falling down the rabbit hole and landing on our behind, and it hurts at first, but you like where you land is where we're most comfortable. I mean, what's going to happen next is what we're most excited about, is what we're going to wind up being gravitated towards working on, and pushing and releasing. Right now, we've got Mjölnir, that's just freshly been released. We have a bunch of shows this summer that are going to be promoting Mjölnir all around the North Atlantic region of America, etc. New York and the 10 or 12 states that are around New York, etc. We're running around. That's on the agenda currently. There might be some shows that have Thor involved at some point. We haven't had any of those confirmed yet, but we'll see. That could be in the fall. But we do have the next album, per se, that I spoke about earlier, already recorded. It's not mastered yet. It doesn't have a title yet, but we have a lot of concepts and theories and ideas. And aside from that, we have a large amount of home recording material, as we both set ourselves up during the later portion of the pandemic with home recording setups, because we just had to join that movement as technology has become a lot more widely available, to make your own stuff outside of amazing studios like Bisi Studios and Inner Ear Studios. So we have a large amount of really different sounding material that we're working on in that capacity. And we have brand new material we've been playing live that's a part of another album that we haven't recorded yet, that we talked with Don Z about maybe going and doing in his basement, now that Inner Ear is in his basement, to kind of come back and close the circle a little bit with Don.
Yeah, that's great.
could very well happen. So what's coming up next is we just celebrated our 15-year anniversary this year, and we almost wanted to dip into our archive and make like a long 5-minute like mini tribute to that. And then we realized, well, we're going to be around at the 20-year mark if we're both alive, because we have another album recorded. We have a bunch of stuff we've been recording at home, and we have a new one that we're writing. So we have the arc and we're following the story. So I think what comes next is more of what we do, which is, giving everything we got, following our mission, which is to see this through. I mean, my cousin and I realized like it's not about getting anything out of this anymore. It's about giving our music back. Whether people want it or not, that's up to them. But this great musical stream that we've made many cups of tea from. We've siphoned plenty of sustaining cups of water from the stream. We're pissing our music back into the stream, whether it's coming up as a sustainable water or urine. I'm not sure. You hate it, you like it. It's yellow, it's clear. I don't care. But we feel that we need to bring back to the table what we've fed from, and we're going to keep on doing it because it really makes us happy and sane. And we don't have a specific goal other than the free feeling we get when we play. So what's next is more, and more.
Okay.
And more. Yeah.
That sounds great, man. So happy to hear. So the new album is Mjölnir. Is that how you pronounce it?
Mjölnir. Yes.
Mjölnir. I'm sorry.
No
very,
problem.
very difficult for me. I was struck by it. I was just like, well, how the fuck do I do this? Mjölnir. All right.
I've had other individuals email me asking if I could send along a phonetic spelling where I'll just write like me dash y'all
meow meow Neil meow meow.
meow.
It's like, do like a cat,
Yeah.
Mjölnir.
Dash near. Yeah,
There
so
you
I
go.
understand that you can trip up on it, but it is called Mjölnir, and it is, available now
Yes.
via Nefarious Industries, and you can go to our Bandcamp. Bandcamp is a good way to. You could stream it anywhere in everyone's streams, but if you want to buy the vinyl, you could go to cinema.bandcamp.com. It's definitely available there.
Beautiful. Perfect. Ev, it's been great speaking with you, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
It is an absolute pleasure. I look forward to 2025 and the next album cycle. And the first thing I'm going to ask is, can I please be on that show again? Because it's a lovely time.
Sure, man.